There's one thing I want to say today, and that is stop the show trials. We've got to stop the show trials. It is so important. Ever since I've been aware of Islam, I've been aware of the threat of lawfare. Be careful, don't say this. No, don't say Muslims, say Islam. No, don't say this, say that. Be really careful. Is this really what it says in the Quran, etc.? In other words, it's been watch out, watch out, watch out. And it hasn't been watch out, you're being mean, watch out, you're being unfair, watch out, you're being cruel or biased or anything. It's been watch out, you might be doing something that could get you into trouble even though you're being really careful and even though you're not slamming against all Muslims and even though you really care about truth and even though all your life you've cared about human rights, none of that has counted. It's always been watch out, watch out, watch out. And it hasn't been a figment of anyone's imagination. In country after country, there have been law trials, lawfare. Tommy Robinson in England was hauled over the coals for lying on a mortgage application, which almost certainly would not have gotten any attention whatsoever, except that he was getting people together against the rape gangs. He was speaking out about Islam. In Canada, Ezra Levant published what came to be known as the Danish cartoon. He thought everyone would be publishing it. After all, there was this big fuss about this cartoon. How could people decide if they didn't see it? So he published it. He was the only one, and he certainly faced consequences. Those consequences have included ever so much. They included like 2 years of his life. I believe it was $100,000. It might have been $200,000. And it was the magazine where he published the cartoon. Lawfare. Examples over and over and over again. And lawfare, or show trials, are really expensive. Most people don't have that kind of money. It's way more money than for an expensive holiday. It's not cheap being dragged into court, especially if you want a good lawyer. For Tommy Robinson, a good lawyer meant the difference between life and death, most likely. Because the first time, when he didn't have a good lawyer, he ended up getting 6 months in prison. He begged for and got most of it in solitary confinement because it was so dangerous, as he was put among Islamic violent offenders, including murderers. So I say stop the show trials. I remember about rape victims. The big thing was they were being re-hauled over the coals. Not only had they been raped, then it was, why were you wearing that? Where were you there? Why were you at home? All kinds of stuff. So they were found guilty, basically, of having gotten themselves raped, no matter how careful they were. And if they in any way were not careful, it was as if they were the criminals. But there is a different thing there. In rape trials, they had been raped. The show trials that we're talking about, people have just been speaking out a little bit. So they haven't gone and no one has raped them. It's the trial which is the rape. So I come much more to the show trials in Russia, the show trials of dissidents. It was very dangerous, not only speaking out against Stalin, it was very, very dangerous being thought to have or suspected of in any way not being on Stalin's side. Show trials. Here now there's something very, very different though. In Stalinist Russia, the show trials were against dissidents. In other words, the state was being protected by the show trials. Here in the West, the state is attacking those who are trying to protect the West, who are trying to uphold freedom of speech, who are trying to uphold Western values. So it's the state that has been taken away from the West. The state, in other words, the legal profession, the law courts, so much of it is now on the side of those who are against the West. It's always, of course, done under like, oh no, hate speech, etc. But there's nothing about, or very little except from the people on trial. What about freedom of speech? What about freedom of thought? What about freedom of exploration? The big thing I know, we need our safety. We need to be safe back. In fact, a really strange thing, when people were concerned about rape, okay, rape victims were re-traumatized by the trials. But if you spoke out against rape, there was no danger that then somebody would come and rape you just to show you, or at least I never heard of any of that. But now it is precisely speaking out, which is dangerous. We need our safety. We need to stop the rape trials. Oh, whoops, that was an interesting slip. Yes, those are trials that basically traumatize or victimize, or however you want to call it, the people who are put on trial. So stop the show trials. And for that, there is something I'm asking for, and that is that you donate. Why? Because this is the biggest vulnerability. It is not that someone will be instantly thrown into jail. It isn't that they will instantly be hauled in front of a firing squad. It is that this will cost and cost and cost. It may cost them their life savings if they had any. It may cost them their homes. It may cost them their peace of mind. It will cost and cost and cost. And most often, the other side, those against freedom of speech, have the tab picked up by the government that is supposed to be on the side of the laws of the West, but so often absolutely is not. So, two things to stop the show trials. And one thing you can do, if you can afford it, please donate. Thank you.